Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for the Sunday morning, and namaskar to my Indian friends. I think a brilliant introduction by Justice Manish gave some thought-provoking ideas there. Also want to make reference to what the Indian President, the Bar Association, Mr. Prashant Kumar said yesterday, and he gave some very interesting ideas as well. So thank you for inviting me and to share my humble thoughts with you. Now, I'm actually a practicing lawyer and arbitrator, but I'm here as chairman of the Board of Governors, Sri Lanka National Arbitration Center. That is an honorary post. So my views here would not be really the views of the organization per se. I will be, for a thought-provoking discussion, giving a slightly contrarian view, because with such an august assembly here, to do justice to this topic in 15 minutes when you need a doctoral thesis is not fair by me. So any controversial thoughts, please bear with me. So, as you know, we are all members of the legal fraternity. So I strongly subscribe to the view that we must follow the rule of law. So I am seeking to look at a solution within the rule of law. So what is known as sovereign debt crisis, there are certain issues, and a solution has to be found in this day and age. We are talking about technological innovations, other dramatic developments in various fields. Why cannot the legal community put their collective thoughts and brilliance, if I say, and come up with a solution? Very salutary thought was given by Justice Manish in the morning. In fact, I wanted to build on it since I am a member of the Board of Governors here. An internationally recognized dispute resolution system, which might be an amalgam between private and public law, has to be found. I think this is an innovative idea which we can expand upon. Of course, it will be good for lawyers as well, but it will be good for the countries as well. I think because there are situations where there are individual cases filed in certain countries against individual nations who are finding it difficult to come up with a solution to the debt crisis whilst meeting challenges in local courts by various lenders, some with good intentions, some with various other intentions. So it is a serious problem for the people. So getting back now, broadly speaking, if there is a sovereign debt crisis caused by what is called a force majeure situation. Now all of you know what is force majeure. Here I am referring to an uncontrollable force. So let's call it the dark force. Force majeure may be act of God. This might be a slightly different force. For example, during the COVID crisis, there were resultant economic lockdowns. Several nations were crippled. Trade was stopped. What do the countries do? Directives were issued by the World Health Organization. Comply. No complaint. This led to economies collapsing. And we know even in our region this happened. The resulting economic disruption forced these countries to confront the debt crisis. They were prevented from servicing their debts. Inflow remittances from migrants, export industries stopped, led to a balance of payments crisis. And the people in this country were left helpless. So if there is a sovereign debt crisis caused by these external forces, how do you address that? Now, there are self-inflicted sovereign debt crisis, corruption, predatory lending, etc., etc. That is very topical, but that's a topic for another day. So my concern is there has to be a solution to what the debt crisis that has been caused by this major, force major or dark major situation. Now, solutions should come to this from the multilateral agencies itself. For example, whilst appreciating the help of the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, etc., which have done great things after Bretton Woods, if you look at their preamble and their intentions, can we come up with the thought-provoking idea how to meet this situation? Should we have an economic Marshall Plan? After the Second World War, as you all know, this help assisted all these countries, very much developed countries now, to come out of the horrors of the war. Isn't this a similar crisis? We cannot have sovereign nations paying 60% of their income just to service debt in the present crisis. This is leading to a vicious cycle. And the people are trapped in this vicious cycle, especially the people at the bottom tier of the social ladder. So I am not advocating a breach of these agreements, only a solution within the agreements. That means a solution within the rule of law. I think this will also lead to a spurt of economic growth. So, since we have been talking about this point at various forums, I would like to suggest, very humbly, look at this innovatively, maybe with 3 steps. A debt reformulation strategy with specific timelines and specific interest rates to cover this force major or dark major period. Secondly, protection against currency depreciations, which exacerbates and increases the debt these countries have to pay. Also, a freeze of interest for such period, of course, but is just an equitable. I am not advocating a reduction of capital component borrowings. That is a matter for each sovereign nation to negotiate on its behalf. As you know, my country, Sri Lanka, one of the first countries in South Asia to liberalize the economy in 1977. Very few know. Unfortunately, about a few years ago, had to face a sovereign debt crisis caused by various situations, some internal and exacerbated by the COVID lockdowns and the defaults. So, however, with a little help from friends and including our neighboring country, which we are very grateful, we had had a dramatic stabilization, I must say, irrespective of politics or whoever. From 70% inflation, it dropped down to 7% within 2 years. Stringent austerity measures. Currency was stabilized. Growth is now up to 4%. But now with debt repayments, that growth of 4% is not enough. Do we want to get caught in a vicious cycle again? So these statistics I am mentioning with reference to the central bank reports. Now, GATT, WTO, World Bank, IMF, as you all know, means a set of rules. So as I said, can't they come up with a mechanism to modify these set of rules, not to break them, modify the set of rules. I think that was the ideas of the opening remarks. And the principles of state policy was referred to by my learned predecessor. In fact, even in our constitution, it is not enforceable, but it is there. So if the IMF, World Bank, and all these agencies enforce fiscal discipline and austerity, my discussion is, if these financial difficulties were caused by matters beyond the sovereign control, as I said earlier, should there not be a mechanism, and in fact there should be a mechanism within the system to provide technical assistance to promote growth. This is a serious lacuna. This has to be addressed now. I'm reading through this topic, grateful to some of the thoughts being shared by the new World Bank President, Mr. Ajay Banga, even the IMF head, Ms. Georgieva, who have been very concerned about this situation, I must say. However, they themselves realize the situation. I think Mr. Ajay Banga, in a speech with Reuters, in an interview with Reuters, said, world economies are now facing their weakest long-term growth in 25 years. World Bank has to look at reforms to create job creation, which is an innovative idea. Noting 1.2 billion young people are expected to enter the workforce in developing countries over the next decade. But only 420 million jobs were on the horizon. So this is not an economic issue only for the sovereign debt crisis. It's a global issue. Now, is higher taxes and higher debt payments the only way out? In my opinion, millions of people within the Asian region per se can be lifted out of poverty if there is a slightly innovative approach. There is with this a possibility for dramatic economic growth as well, if such restructuring and recalibration is done properly and fast. I would say carpe diem, seize the moment. Now I am advocating this slightly contrarian view. However, there is also duty cast on these countries to implement structural reforms, improve on governance. That is vital. Transparent auditing, I think some of my learned colleagues will refer to that. Look at prudent borrowing. Those things must be looked at. Now, if sovereign debtor nations or those in power or external borrowings or the dark force situations caused the economic crisis, what do the people of this sovereign crisis do? They would be helpless. They are helpless. So, those in the financial, legal, banking sectors, whilst adhering to the rule of law and their structural lending policies, must come up with an innovative solution. And within this audience itself, speaking casually, there were a lot of ideas exchanged. So if there is so much of strategic thinking here, within the region itself, I think we should come up and push for these solutions within these multinational agencies. Sri Lanka's former Foreign Minister, Lakshman Kadirgama, in a book some time ago on a different topic, Seven Sisters of South Asia, he was referring to the South Asian countries, says there are problems, but they are not intractable. He called upon the professionals in all these countries to get together and work out solutions. That has to be done, and we are grateful for seminars such as this for bringing people together and to have an exchange of ideas. But talk is not enough, something has to be done. And we are proud of India's success today, I must say. I was in Bangalore in 1992 as a young law student taking part in one of your moot competitions. I think India was just coming out of a financial crisis. I think the prudent handling of that situation is an eye-opener for all our countries. These prudent policies has resulted in dramatic growth and a reduction of poverty. So it is actually surreal that after so long, I am at this podium addressing in India on a slightly different on a topic like this. So coming to the legal system. So whilst there is a plethora of legal institutions, rules, experts, let's look at some, or let me broach some thoughts. In our country, Sri Lanka, within the law itself, this is for example I'm saying, we have certain elements of the Roman Dutch law, part of our contractual heritage. It is, one principle is the principle of unjust enrichment, which is recognized in our law. So the rigors of the law sometimes are tempered by this thing. Now the same principle I would like to advocate. Can there be unjust enrichment on a debt servicing period for a situation caused by this dark force? Should not these legal principles be looked at? If you look at the field of international commercial arbitrations, as you all know, it arose after the horrors of the First World War. Establishment of the International Chamber of Commerce, the New York Convention. So this became the Magna Carta of international trade, dispute resolution. This also arose out of a war. We are now facing an economic war. Not only the Asian regions, other regions as well. So what I would say is, honor these international treaties, honor the rules, let the rules itself come up with a mechanism to recalibrate this sovereign debt to promote economic growth, prosperity to the region, and especially for the people of the region. From statistics, about 15% of our country, slid down to poverty for no fault of their own. They have to be protected. So whilst I said we had these commendable fiscal austerity measures, belt tightening as they call, no imports, we couldn't import cars for 4 years. There are other repercussions. Young professionals leave the country. People who had minimum savings for their retirement have them wiped out. You have to look after them. So international dispute resolution mechanism would one possibility of looking at this in a holistic manner. Now again I emphasize the point that we must follow the rule of law. If not, what happens with the sovereign debt crisis? Even private contracts get breached. For example, contracts, let's say a construction contract funded by a multilateral agency would be stopped due to the sovereign debt crisis. There is a breach of a contract. People lose jobs. Governments itself might move to arbitrary governance. They might look at suppression. Just before I came here, since I was speaking on this topic, there was a protest march going in bold red letters. So I opened my car window and got one to my hand as well. Immediately called for exit from the IMF, kicking out of all politicians who are subscribing to the IMF. So whilst we may not subscribe to that view, we must give ear to that view, otherwise there will be a social crisis. That will also lead to a breakdown of the rule of law. That is why it is imperative to come up with a solution. So, again I say with these innovative approaches, before I conclude, we must strengthen the anti-corruption laws domestically, improve transparency on these borrowings and what the agreements that have been signed with multilateral agencies, possibly build up an emergency fund for these countries within the budgetary allocations itself for short-term relief, develop a sovereign debt fund within these multilateral agencies, what is with a special drawing rights as an immediate short-term measure to protect the vulnerable and marginalized. I think all this can be done whilst following the rules and the rules of law. Thank you very much.